Jesus said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." The phrase seems very much out of place when we consider the context in which it was given. At the time, all heaven was breaking loose. Crowds of severely ill, gravely ill people have limped, hobbled, and been carried to see Jesus. And he has been healing them without effort, exception. It's as if a sea of human suffering is breaking in upon Jesus, and they recede whole and sound. And in the wake of putting pain and suffering to flight on a large scale, Jesus gathers his committed followers to himself. Not those he healed, but those who accompanied him on this healing campaign. And within the context, then, of gasps of joy and shouts of delight, Jesus says, "Blessed are those who mourn." Mourning. The word Jesus used doesn't merely say, "Blessed are those who feel sad." It refers to the external expression of an inward condition. It means those who get outside the sadness that is inside. Jesus says, "Blessed are those who both feel grief inwardly and express it outwardly." Blessed are those who get out here what they feel in here. Lisa was a friend of mine. We went to high school together. She was a couple years younger than I was. I went away to college, and she died in high school. I was not able to attend the funeral. I came back, though, at break and made it a point to go visit her mother and to express my sympathy. And she had me sit down and took out a book with pictures of Lisa in it. She stood at my shoulder with her hand on my shoulder, and she flipped the pages. And I looked at the images, and she kept on flipping to the point where I said, "Well, kind of haven't we seen enough?" But she kept on flipping, and I wanted to be polite. And then I started to look at the pictures, and I started to think about her. And I started to mourn, to get out here what was in here. And when that happened, she withdrew her hand, and then I was on my way. And it occurred to me, the thing that she intended to do was create space for me to grieve. She gave me a gift. She created a context where I had to think about something that I might not want to think about, where I had to not only feel sad, but express that sadness in mourning. Mourning extends to life choices we make as well. Remember, I did a fifth step. I do those for Alcoholics Anonymous. They do a fearless moral inventory of their life as part of the process of recovery. And this woman that I was speaking to, meeting with, she talked to me about having gotten an abortion. And it felt to me like this was a very impactful experience in her life. And she went by it. And so I had her pause. I said, "Wait a minute, just a little bit. Could you tell me a little bit about that? Can you tell me about where you went? Can you tell me about what happened when you went there? Can you tell me about how you felt about the procedure? Can you tell me what the experience was like?" She started then to get into the details of it, how fast it felt, how cold the table felt, how rushed the experience was for her. And then as she began to think about it, she glossed over it, she began to feel the weight of what had happened. and her inward sense of feeling started to express itself outwardly. She wept, she mourned, and she got out here what was in here. Mourning is painful. It's not pleasurable. Maybe that's why we tend to keep it at bay. We tend, as much as we can, to bury sad. We can't always do it. We use glad to bury sad. We run towards things that are pleasurable. Sometimes it's not running towards pleasure really, but it's running away from sad. We use bad to bury sad. Sometimes we do things that are not in line with what we want to do because we want to alter our mood. We want to change the way we feel, and we do bad things. Sometimes the feeling that we're looking to alter is sadness. We use glad to bury sad. We use bad to bury sad. We can even use mad to bury sad. When things are in a condition where we feel sorrow, we can be angry. What they say is fear is a second tier emotion. If fear is here, if you chase the roots of fear, you will find that it roots in grief and in sadness. But it's easier to feel the power of anger than the vulnerability of sadness. And so we use mad, bad, and glad to bury sad. The problem is that grief is a necessary process. One writer put it this way: if we move away from grief, it becomes our enemy. It will bring us to places that we do not want to go. If we move towards grief, it becomes our friend. Grief is going to be something that will accompany us. And if we lean into it, it can be our friend. If we lean away from it, it can be an enemy. The problem with burying sad is that when we distance ourselves from mourning, we distance ourselves from comfort. Because Jesus said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." Blessed are those. Jesus is the fulfillment of all these Beatitudes. He expressed his grief to God, and he experienced comfort from God. What it says, during the days of Jesus' life on earth, he offered up prayers and petitions with loud cries and tears to the one who could save him from death. And he was heard because of his reverent submission. Although he was a son, he learned obedience from what he suffered. And once made perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation to all who obey him. It says Jesus' obedience. This is the text I'm aware of in the Bible where Jesus had to learn anything. He learned obedience. It didn't come innately because he was God. He came as God in human flesh, and because of that arrangement of divine and human, Jesus had to learn something that we experience. He had to learn grief. He had to learn. The word obedience is not a great translation. It literally, the word is under listening. Obedience is under listening. And here's what it's suggesting. Jesus learned under listening from what he suffered. What does that mean? He tuned into something. And I'm going to suggest he tuned into two things. He tuned into the sadness that he felt. He tuned into it. He didn't push it away. He didn't bury it. He didn't use glad to bury it. Didn't use mad to bury it. Didn't use bad to bury it. He tuned it in. He tuned in the suffering, and he tuned in his Father. That's challenging, isn't it? To tune in both the source of suffering and the one who comforts us in our suffering. And the reason why we do that, to tune in to sadness and to tune into the Father, is not to eliminate the sadness, because the fact is, there are things in life that are grievous, and grief is not optional. The reason we connect with the Father and connect with the sadness is not to eliminate it. It's to endure it. Because the fact is, in isolation, grief is unendurable. We move away from it. We can't stay there alone. When we have grief, somebody there allows us to touch the feeling because we touch another person. That's what we need in a time of grief. Jesus learned to touch in order to feel and to express. Offered up is a word used for sacrifices. It's when a priest, in order to do what God said, slay an animal in order to overcome sin. That's offering the animal up. Jesus didn't do that. What it says, he offered up prayers and petitions. It doesn't just say he offered up prayers and petitions. Does it? Does it? He offered up prayers and petitions with loud cries and tears. When Jesus cried, when he wept over Jerusalem, he didn't just, just a tear going and he didn't just flick it away. He grieved out loud. He mourned with loud cries and tears, and he didn't just do it in the Garden of Gethsemane. I think Jesus grieved a lot. He knew at age 12 that the temple, which advertised "Find God here," was the place in the world where you would least likely to find God. And what he said, those who were there made you twice as much a son of hell as they themselves were. He knew that at age 12 that the temple was his Father's house. He knew it. He knew what his Father's house was supposed to be about because he knew the Father. And what he knew about the temple is, my Father is not reflected here. And he had to experience that. You ever experienced that? Somebody you love and somebody refers or paints a picture of them that is out of character with what the person is like, and you have to hear this person you love get slammed and get talked about in these awful ways, but you can't say anything. And well, maybe you can, and maybe you do. Or maybe if you get to a place where it hits you enough, maybe you feel sad about it. That's what Jesus did. And so he felt grief. He didn't receive a green light to do anything about it. He was going to receive a green light, but he didn't do it. And so what did he do when he turned 13 and 14 and 15? And he still knew God was his Father. He knew the temple wasn't the place people were going to meet him, but he wasn't given anything to do about him. And then he hit 17 and 18 and 19 and 20 and 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. What did he do during those times? He felt grief and he expressed it to his Father. He learned to be comfortable with grief. Jesus expressed grief and he experienced comfort. The word comfort is translated encouragement elsewhere. And that's really a better translation. The word literally is to call somebody alongside. Let's say you are walking down the street and you need assistance getting to the end of the street. There's a difference between encouragement and accountability. Accountability might be, I stand out in front of you, I see you walking, I say, hold it, wait a minute. Yeah. I see that you're walking to the end of the street, and here's your problem. You're not walking the right way. You know, you have to walk on the balls of your feet. And so if you walk on the balls of your feet, and you'll get to the end of the road. That's accountability. And that's one thing, and sometimes we need that. But the word encouragement is to call you alongside and say something that will lead you to be able to go on to the place where you're more likely to be. And encouragement is an alongside thing. So what encouragement would look like is if I see you walking out there, I don't turn around and get in front of you and stop you. I start walking alongside you. That's alongside. And I say things to you to keep you on the road that's truly best for you. And you know what I do? I accompany you. That's what encouragement is. And that's what we experience. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will receive encouragement, comfort. What did Jesus receive from the Father? When you see it, although he was a son, he learned obedience from what he suffered, and once made perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation to all who under listen to him. Did he receive comfort? More encouragement, isn't it? Because he wasn't saved from death. He was saved through death. You know, and again, do you know what makes suffering intolerable? It's how alone we feel. Distress is very isolating. Would you agree with me? When there's nothing anybody can do, you look around and your family can't do anything and they can't help you feel any better than because this thing happened. And the thing is, we look at the situation, the facts, and we want somebody to change the facts. Take away the problem, bring the solution. That's part of the issue. The other part of the issue is how alone we feel. And that's what we find, that encouragement is what Jesus experienced. So he walked through death. But he didn't walk alone. And you know what that allowed? It allowed for him to tolerate it. Because the thing that makes mourning intolerable is how alone we feel in it. I would dare say there's something that submerges sadness, and there's something that surfaces it. We're going to feel sad. There's something that will submerge sadness and something that will surface it. What surfaces sadness? Sympathy surfaces sadness. If you are in a bad place and somebody sits down and cares, it's something that, this guy I talked to about, Joe Bailey, he viewed from a hearse, he lost 2 children in a car accident. And he was at the wake. People came up to him and tried to comfort him, and one person came and talked about how God really must have something special to you to put you through such a trial. And he couldn't wait for the person to leave. Another woman came and talked about flowery psalms and birds and flowers and rainbows, and he couldn't wait for her to leave. Then this guy came, sat quietly, prayed simply, and left. Joe Bailey said, I hated to see him go. The comfort Jesus received came, he didn't feel, look what it says, and it's not just him. It says, praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all encouragement, I think would be a better word, who encourages us in all our troubles, so that we can encourage those in any trouble with the encouragement that we have received from God. So it's describing a process of how God's encouragement comes to intersect with the sufferings of people. What God does, he brings his children into a wilderness experience. Do you know what a wilderness experience is? It's a place of suffering. Chronic enough that you can't just push the feelings down. And chronic suffering can create a couple of things. It can create grumbling, and it does. It can also create encouragement and lead to encouragement if we learn to sit in it. And that's what wilderness is all about. What God does, he comforts us, his children, in our sufferings. Why does he do that? Why does he do that? That would mean he causes us to experience sufferings. And when we experience sufferings, it's like, what did I do wrong? How come I have to be sad? We assume something's wrong when we're sad. And so he causes us to allows or causes? Allows or causes? It seems in order to channel comfort and encouragement, it's not allow, it's cause. He causes, that's what he did with Jesus, didn't he? When Jesus, it says, you're my beloved son, and what did he do? Did he allow him to go to the wilderness? No, he led him there. And the Israelites, did he allow them to walk around in circles? He led them. He does that. Why would he do that? Because the encouragement we receive, we can turn around and give to someone else who has experienced encouragement. So God reflects his encouragement through his children. That's what it says. The person who promises the encouragement here is God. Those who mourn to God are promised that God himself will give them the strength to go on, and he will reveal himself. In the Old Testament, we can get tied up because this is what look what it says. Here's the Old Testament promises. If you fully obey the Lord your God and carefully follow all his commands I give you today, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations on the earth. All these blessings will come upon you and accompany you if you obey the Lord your God. You will be blessed in the city and blessed in the country. The fruit of your womb will be blessed, and the crops of your land, and the young of your livestock. The Lord will grant that the enemies who rise up against you will be defeated before you. They will come at you from one direction, but flee from you in seven. The Old Testament benefits are observable. Children, you know what that means? You can post them on your Facebook page. Old Testament blessings can be posted on a Facebook page. Here's my kids, and here's my job, and here's us on vacation, and here's my enemies, and so it's something that you can observe. The problem is the blessings didn't last. This ended up not being what they experienced. The writer of Hebrews, it says what they did experience. Here's what it says. All these people that were promised these things in the Old Testament, everything will be blessed. Here's what they experienced. All these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. The thing that they were looking to experience that would make them happy, they didn't get there. So they were short of it, and they were in a place where they were short of it and sad because they were short. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance. They admitted that they were aliens and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. Those who are God's children did not receive in this world what they had been promised. And because they didn't, they mourned. But what they understood, the mourning was about, it's not about, I did something wrong. It was about them understanding this world is not the world that I was created for. This world is temporary. This world is a vapor. The pleasures of this world are a vapor. And so are the sorrows of this world a vapor. These people, they walked through life. They didn't get the things they received. But you know what they came to understand, and it's difficult to understand? Well, the reason why we have what we don't want, that we feel what we don't want, that we think what we don't want to feel, that we have what we don't want to have, do you know why that's so? We tend to think because I'm doing something wrong, or because God's doing something wrong. We point a finger and blame, and because we blame, we can't be sad. You know what the deal is? We're homesick. This is not the world that we were created for ultimately. And to assume that we should have our needs met here, you know what it's like being in a place where you've promised a feast, and the journey towards the feast, you receive a stipend, so maybe you're making this journey and you're going to be at this banquet and you're going to get there and it's going to be wonderful. So you go into this and you've been given some lunch cards, and so you can stop for lunch at these places, and boy, this isn't, this is okay, this keeps me going, but this isn't the food, that's a journey. The food on a journey just keeps you going. It's not the place that we're going to end up. The place where we're going to end up, we're not going to be able to mourn. I'll talk to you. Through faith in Christ, we're going to be there together on the other side. That's what Jesus came for. And remember we talked about mourning? Try to feel sad. I said, come on, try to feel sad. And you're going to say, I can't. On this side, I would never tell you try not to feel sad. You know why? You know why? Because blessed are those who mourn. Don't stuff down your sadness because you have what you don't want to have, you do what you don't want to do, you think what you don't want to think, and you feel what you don't. Don't stuff it down. Don't blame it. Don't blame it. Feel it. And connect with Him. Because it's possible to endure it when you're not alone. In the Old Testament, blessings are observable. In the New Testament, and the last thing we'll look at, there's a dynamic. What it says, God who said, let light shine out of darkness, made His light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Christ. So far, so good. We have this treasure in jars of clay to show that the all-surpassing power is from God, not from us. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, so that life may be revealed in our body. Those to and through whom God reveals Himself are treated like jars of clay. You know what a jars of clay is like. It contains a treasure, but you don't have to be careful with a jar of clay. It's a jar of clay. I have clay jars. And so if you bump up against it and it falls, oh, it's glass. No, it's just clay. And so jars of clay are subjected to rough handling. That's what the inference is. And in being subjected to rough handling, that jar might think, wait a minute, I thought I have a treasure inside, and so why aren't you protecting me? Why do you put me in harm's way? Why did you allow this to happen? Why did you allow that to happen? I thought you were my God. I thought you were my protector. It can be difficult to experience difficult things. What he says, on this side of eternity, those to and through whom I reveal myself go through some things that are difficult. And what I want to do in the midst of those is to provide encouragement. What is encouragement like? You know what encouragement is? It's a couple things. I think it involves two things. And both of them are important. Divine encouragement has to begin with this. Sympathy. Sympathy. You know what? Sympathy surfaces sadness. You know what Jesus would say to you in the midst of what you're dealing with? Trials make us feel very disconnected. You know what Jesus would do if he sat down with you and you talked to him about what you're going through and how lonely it makes you feel? Jesus would eyeball you very intensely. And he would say, I know exactly how that feels. To be in your family and to feel both connected to your family and distanced from your family. I know exactly how that feels. To find yourself walking around and people seem to want to set snares for you, to trip you up. Jesus would say that sense of everybody you go to seems to want to stick their foot out. I know exactly how that feels. And the reason he would tell you that, because he doesn't want you to be alone in it. Because blessed are those who mourn, but you can't mourn until somebody cares. That's why the sympathy of the Son, it's not nice. It's necessary. This is not frosting. This is non-negotiable. Make it your job to tune in Jesus' sympathy. It is critical. And then you've got the sympathy of the Son, and now you've got the sovereignty of the Father. He comes in on the way. And you know what the Father says to you? Stop. Now that you've received the sympathy of the Son, the Father would say, I don't want you to change anything. Don't change your feelings. Wait a minute. Don't change my feelings. I feel off. Don't change your feelings. That's what he says. That's what be still means. Stop. Don't change the facts. Well, I've got to fix it. I've got to stop. Hold it for just a second. And then what God says, know this. I am God. I am going to be exalted in the nations and on the earth. And I will never leave you. And I will never forsake you. Why do we need to know that? So that we can express and ask. And what would you ask for when you're going through difficult times? If he's not, maybe you ask for, take this away, and that's something to ask. But you know what else you might ask? Give me grace to walk with you on this path. Give me peace. I feel so agitated and alone. Give me grace. Give me peace today. God's things are a day at a time. Help me deal with my feelings today. We want God to take away the threat in the future in order to make us feel better today. God's not going to eliminate the threat in the future. What he wants to give you is something you need today to deal with your feelings today. Ask for grace. Ask for strength. What else we might ask for? Wisdom. If anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, God, how in the world am I going to keep going? What God says, ask me for wisdom. Grace, peace, wisdom, strength. Here's what Paul says. I know the secret of having enough, being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all things through him who gives me stuff. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not stuff. I can do all things through him who gives me what? What? Strength. Strength. Divine enablement. That's what God will give. Wisdom, peace, grace, strength. I like the way C.S. Lewis has a couple quotes that we'll stop with. We tend to think that suffering really shouldn't need to happen. Get the next slide. C.S. Lewis said, I dare not leave out the hard saying which I once heard from an experienced Christian. I have seen many striking answers to prayer and more than one that I thought miraculous. But he says, but they usually come at the beginning, before conversion, or soon after it. As the Christian life proceeds, they tend to be rarer. The refusals to are not only more frequent, they become more unmistakable, more emphatic. Next slide. Finally, we'll close. You are probably right, quite right in thinking that you will never see a miracle done. What we look for, miracles. And he says, you might find some, but you're probably not going to see the kind in the Bible. He says, nothing almost sees miracles but misery. Miracles and martyrdoms tend to bunch about in the same areas of history, areas that we naturally do not wish to figure. What do we do on this side of that? We learn to mourn, to get out here, what's in here, to touch our feelings and to touch his hand in order to endure the discomfort, not to get rid of it. Tension's non-negotiable. And he just doesn't want us to go through it alone. He wants to give us things so that we can walk with others, so we can connect with him with this hand and to care for another with another. Let's stand for closing prayer. Yeah, you fill this blank in ways that people never did. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Doesn't feel, but it's what you say, and you didn't stutter. You said it to those who, to and through whom you reveal yourself. Not necessarily the healed, those who accompanied you. The ones that you were revealing yourself through. That's what you told to them. There are miracles, but when we walk with you, mourning is part of the picture. And you would have us recognize that encouragement is channeled to and through us. And so I pray that we would learn to come to you in the midst of it. In Jesus' name, amen.